Welcome to the Slow Living Podcast. If you are ready to ditch hustle culture for good while continuing to meet your personal and professional goals, you are in the right place. I'm your host, Stephanie O'Day, and I work with overachievers from all over the world who are ready to stop living life in triage mode and start living the life of their dreams, one filled with abundance, joy, and a sense of purpose. Life is meant to be enjoyed, not endured. Let's get started. Hi there, Slow Down Society. So if you're a fan of the podcast, you're going to absolutely love the book. Slow Living, Cultivating a Life of Purpose in a Hustle-Driven World is now available wherever books are sold. Buy it for yourself, your children, your friends, and your neighbors. You can get all the juicy details at stephanieoday.com/slow living book. Trust me, this is hands down the best $20 you'll ever spend. Hi there, Slow Down Society. Steph here, and we're back for another edition of the Slow Living Podcast. We're on episode 180, and today we're going to meet Jessica. And Jessica refers to herself as the Autistic Mom. And I just finished reading Jessica's book. And it is amazing and it is wonderful. And I'm so thrilled to have her with us today. So this is what it says in her book. Jessica lives in the northwest of England with her son, Jude. Jessica was diagnosed with ASC and ADHD separately in 2022 at the age of 38. Jude is currently nonverbal and was diagnosed with ASC in 2018 and ADHD in 2023. They enjoy a quiet life together. Jessica has always had a talent from writing from a young age and has a huge passion for reading, particularly nonfiction and criminal psychology. She loves to travel, enjoys fashion and food. In her spare time, Jessica enjoys collecting and organizing for local charities, particularly those that help homeless and disadvantaged children, alongside continuing to learn and advocating for those with ASC and ADHD. And ASC stands for Autism Spectrum Condition. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
I like to use that term rather than ASD because I don't like the word disorder.
No, nobody does.
I don't think it's a disorder, but yeah, we'll get to that.
I like the word condition. I think that is a great word choice. Jessica, thank you. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to speak. I could talk about this subject for hours, so
okay.
I'm happy to be here.
So I read your kind of bio, the marketing version of the bio, but what if you shared a little bit about who you are deep down inside?
Yeah, so I'm 40 now. So yeah, I was diagnosed 2.5 years ago with both conditions. I'm currently in the process of getting divorced. That's what's happening right now, but it's very amicable. And obviously because of Jude, as you've just said, he's autistic and nonverbal. So we have to co-parent well and keep his routine the same and make sure that there's not too much change to his life and, everything else, more than you would for a neurotypical child. But, we are both good parents. That's always been number one. So it's, it's not a problem. Yes, I have started doing this kind of work a couple of years ago, wrote the book. Well, it took me like 3-4 years to write it. It was a lot of hard work. Before that, I had a small business online, making customized women's clothing, more so jackets, shirts, things like that. Yeah, and then I stopped that after the pandemic because I just really wanted to do something that I was passionate about. And once I'd been through this whole journey and got my diagnoses and everything, I just really wanted to help other people, particularly women, which this subject over the last few years has sort of really blown up, hasn't it? So, yeah, it seemed to all come at the right time as well, because it's not just me talking about it. So yeah, and we, yeah, like I said, we just live a quiet life. We like to go on holiday. I don't socialize too much. I have, a couple of close best friends that I've had since I was 10, so like 30 years, and I'm close to my sister and nieces and nephews. And yeah, so pretty boring.
Well, I don't think it's boring because I was absolutely gripped by your book, which reads as fluid as a novel, but it's definitely a memoir. And
Yeah.
it's really enjoyable. And I wanted to ask you, I know that you pushed to get your own self diagnosed after Jude's diagnosis, but
Hmm.
you write pretty early on that you've read that many autistic people say they feel like everyone else except them were given the handbook on how to behave, how to socialize, and how exactly to just function in day to
Yeah.
day life. And you
Yeah.
felt always as if you were missing something.
Yeah. Um, so since a young age, well, from as long as I can remember, in school's obviously a big part of your life when you're a child. That's where you spend most of your time with your peers. So yeah, that is exactly, and a lot of autistic people say the same thing as adults. That is exactly how it feels, that everybody else around you has been given a handbook on how to behave, how to socialize, how to make friends, what's appropriate, what's not, and that you just don't have that information. So it was a lot of um, watching everybody else. I'm really observant anyway, and actually, I think I mentioned in the book that a lot of therapists and psychotherapists and things like that are actually autistic, because we from a young age have to, like, to survive, have to watch other people's body language and gestures and behavior to copy, to do the same. And it then, that just becomes what you naturally do. And it wasn't until I had the diagnosis that I sort of realized, actually, yeah, you do, even though it becomes natural, even though it becomes something that you just automatically do, it still doesn't feel natural. So, for example, eye contact, still, I'm 40 years old, still, not all the time, it depends who, but definitely with like new people, I can feel that I'm having to make myself look in the eyes. Um, so yeah, yeah, it was definitely like everybody else knew something I didn't. Obviously, it gets easier as you get older. But yeah, as a child, you don't know that everybody's different. You don't know, obviously why you're like that. And yeah, you're just sort of trying to get through it as
Mhm.
best you can,
Did you
really.
did you find that you created kind of like rules and checklists that you knew you needed to follow, and it wasn't necessarily someone told you, you just sort of figure this out, like, oh, people do this every day, I better do that too?
Yeah, I mean, nobody ever told me anything. This is just something I've had to pick up. And I mean, again, most children don't go and speak to anyone if they feel a bit different, or they don't probably even know how to express it and explain it. It's just inside. Um, it's not until you get older that you realize, or that you start to be able to speak about things. You just think that, you just assume that everyone is thinking the same, don't you? Um, so yeah, there wasn't just yet. I mean, like I said, the eye contact, maybe like, which I still do again now, is like, I can sense if there's going to be like any conflict probably earlier than other people can. So I just like stay away from that. You can
Yeah.
just tell in someone's body language, and just like, yeah, I just stay away from that, because I've never liked that. Um,
I found it
yeah.
really interesting in the book that you brought up the Netflix TV series of Love on the Spectrum.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so I watched that show and I wondered your thought about the therapist who comes in and sort of coaches
Yes,
them
Jennifer.
how, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I know, like with children, there's the applied behavioral therapy that
Mm-hmm.
helps, but is there anything like that for grown-ups who get diagnosed later, except for what they showcase on Love on the Spectrum?
Yeah, no, I mean, so Love on the Spectrum, there's 3 series. I think there's 2 in America and 1 in Australia, I think. So obviously it's worldwide, so everywhere is different. I'm in the UK. In the UK, so once a child turns 18, and because obviously autism and ADHD are both lifelong conditions, so it doesn't just go away. Like I said, it gets easier just by experience, just like it does for every child, just life, you just experience it and learn more. But that social side, and especially like the relationship side, yeah, I mean, that will always be there. You're never going to be 100% comfortable and natural like neurotypical people are. For those that are maybe needing more support with that, once a child turns 18 in the UK, I mean, again, it's something that the parents will have to fight for, like everything else, but they do have like social skills classes, um, support workers that could help with things like that. I think there are a couple of, especially more so now, like dating agencies, for the romantic side of things for neurodivergent people. So whether that's on an app or what,
Mm-hmm.
there will be offices that you can go to. So there are things similar to what is on that show, which I thought, I mean, to be honest, I said to his dad when we watched that episode that when Jude's older, like if needed, I would like to do something like that, because just because someone is autistic, I might not want to be around someone all the time. You are still capable, one, of being in love. You just still want to be, and you see on that show, they've got so much love to give, but it just might look a little bit different, or yeah, just not you might not want to be with that person like 24/7,
Mm-hmm.
and the relationship itself might look a bit different. I've just spoke on another podcast, as I said, and I said this same thing for me, which I wrote in the book. And I'm not saying it's true for everyone, but I think um, it's good to recognize that all relationships are different, and that not necessarily everyone, neurotypical or neurodivergent, are made to be in a relationship where you're married or living together. Um, that is just something that we're brought up with in society, that you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you meet a partner, you get a house, you have kids, you get married. So that is something that's ingrained in all of us. But at the same time, in the UK, the divorce rates are 50%. So that isn't necessarily what's best for everyone, and for their life and their happiness. That's something I've obviously figured out, just for different reasons. Marriage is hard. So, yeah, relationships are hard at the start and ongoing. So, yeah, neurodivergent people definitely need to have support with that, and know that it's okay, that things don't all have to look the same. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
mm,
The biggest part of slow living is the understanding that we don't live in a one size fits all cookie cutter world. That's kind of
exactly.
marketing hype and societal propaganda, because that's what sort of when you partner up and you share finances, that's very advantageous in
Yeah,
many
well,
in many
exactly.
ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's why a lot of people, especially once you have kids, then stick it out, stay together
Hmm.
for that reason. And something I said to my son Jude, his dad, was that because without going into too much detail, it wasn't like we didn't argue, it wasn't like a huge thing happened. um I just thought we could both be happier apart, for different reasons. And I said to him, a lot of people stay together for the kids, especially a lot of our generation's parents did that and then subsequently ended up getting divorced. And you've got to think about, when Jude's older, if he's married and he was unhappy, would you say to him no, just stay for the kids? Or would you think if he could have a happier life, you would say he should leave? Which obviously you would want him to be the happiest he can be. So you've got to think about that for yourself as well. And then to show that to him, lead by example. You want your kids to see you happy, because then that is what they will learn is right, and
Yeah,
is how life should be. So, yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in the book, you describe a really traumatic childbirth, and you
Ugh,
you put in
yeah.
the line that you probably are still dealing with some of the aftermath of the
Hmm.
trauma. And I applaud you for saying that, um, because many people don't ever fully heal from their childbirth experience, and a whole bunch of doctors and experts and people telling them what to do. Um,
Yeah.
and you're in a very vulnerable position, and I
Yeah.
just want to acknowledge that and say I'm sorry that you had that experience.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, it's again, this is something that is like a taboo to talk about. Everyone knows that labor is painful. That's, a common fact that everyone knows it. But nobody talks about after. Nobody talks about it, the recovery. And don't get me wrong, everyone's different. Some people have a great birth. My best friend's got 3 kids. She loved the whole pregnancy, giving birth, like she'd do it 100 times. But then some people don't for whatever reason. And it is a trauma for everyone. I mean, you've grown a human being for 9 months. Then you have got to get, even if you have a small baby, you still
It has to
got
come
to have
out.
that baby. Exactly. It's got to come out. And then you've got to deal with, the body after it and your hormones and the change. And yeah, so it is like a huge thing. And again, it's not about, and this is the same as with neurodivergence. I don't want people to think, which I think a lot of people do, is it's not people talking about these things because they want to be seen as victims or, want attention. It's just because, like, this happens to, well, every woman that gives birth has to recover, some better than others, but a huge amount of people struggle. Um, so why don't we all talk about it and make it easier? Again, it's the same as menopause. Every single woman goes through it. And it's now only just sort of being talked about publicly. It's been kept quiet. You don't get taught about it in schools, which is just crazy because every female is going to go through it.
Yeah.
So,
Um, I actually think it's misogyny. I think men don't want us to talk because it makes them uncomfortable. And we were all sort of bred in this way that we better please the man in the room and not make them uncomfortable.
yeah, I do
And
agree.
I could be wrong, but that's how I sort of feel like I was raised. Like, oh, we
Yeah,
don't
I
talk
do
about that.
agree that it's definitely got something to do with the patriarchal society that we live in all over the world. Because something I always say is that, and I can't remember what comedian it was. It might have been Amy Schumer, but I'd watched her stand up, and she'd said she was suffering with some gynae problems before she got pregnant, something around that, and someone, a man who she worked with had said something to her along the lines of, oh, like it can't be that bad, or like, why haven't they got like a cure for this or whatever? And it's like, no, but when a man couldn't get an erection, they made a pill for that. Simple, like
Quickly,
quickly as that, and now you can get
multiple
them anywhere.
variations.
Exactly. Yeah. This was like decades ago. But the struggles that women still going through with menopause and then, their own libido at times and things like that, not absolutely nothing to help with any of that, because it's women that
Absolutely.
are going through it, not men. If
I
it was
know.
the other way around, there'd probably be some pill you could take for menopause that'd take everything away. You could probably have pain-free childbirth.
All
It
those
that is
things.
that is it is a fact.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
we need to
wanted to
raise some more strong women.
I wanted to ask, and if you don't want to answer, it's okay to say no. But many people wonder where autism comes from and how it happens. And there are people who think it's linked to certain traumas or maybe it's in genes, or maybe it's environmental factors or vaccines, or maybe it's the traumatic childbirth. What are your thoughts on that? Or are you at the point now where why ask why?
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't really think about why. Obviously, it's a question that sometimes comes up. Something I have seen is that, there's a lot of money and charitable causes are looking into that, when, in my opinion, the money would be better spent supporting the people that are here and that will in the future be here. As in, for example, my son is nonverbal. Other than speech therapy and things like that, there's not a lot more that we can do about that. And he's fine, he's happy, he doesn't get frustrated with it. We're really lucky with that, because there are obviously people that are nonverbal that get very frustrated, which I understand, because can you imagine not being able to speak when you've got so many thoughts? Again, that's something to try not to think about, to be honest. But yeah, and just more schools, because there isn't many SEN schools, and more awareness and acceptance, and just a million different things where that money could be spent, assessment, waiting times, and diagnosis, all that thing, rather than looking for either the reason, or B, a cure, because we don't want a cure. Yes, there are people that suffer more severely and their parents might feel differently. But again, if they were supported better, that might be different. And also, autistic people have always been around, whether people know or agree with that or not. Again, that's a fact. And most of the very successful people in the world are neurodivergent, whether they're autistic or have ADHD, because we need the different brains that work differently, so that we're not all just sat around talking and getting nothing done, because that is, we need people that are more focused like that. I don't believe in it being caused by vaccines. I do know there's like a whole thing on that. I just try not to get involved in the conversation. Obviously, I've learned a lot, so I just know maybe a bit more than the average person. But yeah, I don't believe in that. I don't believe it comes from a traumatic childbirth. So yeah, we had a traumatic childbirth, but for Jude, that was more like his heart rate was dropping, and then he was obviously pulled out by forceps. But that the autistic brains and the way they like show on scans and the things like that, the differences like that can't be caused by that. It's definitely genetic. I mean, that's a fact. So something I would love to happen is for every child that gets diagnosed, for the parents to be assessed as well, just as an add-on. Doesn't need, it can be done maybe at the same time or whatever, because in general that would be the case, or at least it will be in the family somewhere along the line.
Did you push for a diagnosis for yourself after?
No. So once Jude was diagnosed, just before he was 4, and then it was after that I started going on training courses and researching and meeting other parents and things like that I learned so much about it. And one of the training courses, it was a specific point that said, it was like a slideshow on a PowerPoint, and they'd said, this is what the world would look like if everyone was autistic, and it listed all these things. And it was, one of them was that there'd be no like hidden meanings to what people are saying. People just say it straight. So like if you watch shows like Love on the Spectrum, you will see that autistic people, like, we don't have a filter. We will just say what we're thinking or what our opinion, which really is what everyone should do. It's very complicated for us to understand why that isn't the case for most people. So when I seen that and some other things, I was like, yeah, like, I'm really identifying with all of this. And at that point, I hadn't even really thought about the fact that autistic kids then turn into autistic adults. It's just something obviously not so much now, but you used to hear of in kids. Obviously, it is a lifelong condition. So, but at that point, so this was like 6 years ago, I was just quite happy to know everything I did, and thought that's why I've always been a certain way, and it's never really impacted me that much. Obviously, I'm high functioning, which I don't like the term high functioning, but that's the only way you can really label it. Um, so it was just like answers for myself, and like it was fine. And then it wasn't until a few years later, so in 2018, that I then started to struggle with my mental health. I just had a lot of different things on, like I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I was planning our wedding. Jude was like starting school, so it was sorting out the support for him. There was like a few different things that I'd never had to manage all at once before, and I just become completely overwhelmed. That was I just couldn't like function day to day. I was just like stuck in like negative thought cycles and obsessive behaviors, and like I just couldn't go on. So as someone at that time that had never, asked for help or took medication, not even, like paracetamol, like painkillers, anything, I went to the doctor, asked for, told them how I was feeling, which was that I felt my brain was overwhelmed. It just wouldn't switch off. It was just constant, and I couldn't, single out anything to focus on. And what happened then, which is what happens most of the time, is that they said I had anxiety and depression, which I knew I didn't. I wasn't sad. I was sad that I was feeling how I was, because I couldn't enjoy life feeling like that. But there wasn't anything in particular that I wasn't happy with. And I also know that most people with anxiety are worriers. So they worry about maybe getting into a car accident or getting ill, or what if this happens? What if that happens? Like, I've never been like that. It was just that my brain was overwhelmed. Um, but obviously, you listen to the doctor. I didn't have any experience at this point. This was, 6, 7 years ago. So I then tried 6 different antidepressants.
Oh my. Wow.
None of that worked. This was obviously over a course of like 1 to 2 years, because you have to obviously try them for a certain amount of time and then come off them and start again. So I tried 6. None of them helped. Obviously now I know that that's because the issue was that I've got ADHD. So those medications wouldn't have helped. But yeah, it took me like I said, like 6, 7 years to find all of that out for myself. No one told me that, which is one of the reasons I wanted to write the book, to help, particularly women, either give them the advice they need, or if they're going through it, to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that things do get better, because it was a really bad time. It was.
Yeah.
And it's easy to forget. And that's why I kept a diary, a lot of which I put in the book, particularly regards to the trial and the medications and things like that, because I knew that once things are better, you forget how bad it was. And I really wanted it to be as honest as possible for the people that will go through it as well.
Absolutely. The book is very well done. I really enjoyed reading it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to get it right, which is why it took a long time. And because it's so many different, so like you said, it is a bit of a memoir, it's a bit of a guidebook, it's a bit of a parenting book. There's all different things in there. So I wanted to make sure like it flowed for the reader and things like that. So yeah, but yeah, I'm happy with how it turned out. Yeah, eventually.
Absolutely. I wanted to touch a bit on the parenting aspect. What
Mm-hmm.
what are days like now with Jude, who is age 10?
Yeah, so they're just like I said, so like quite quiet through the week when he's at school. We don't, really do too much after, especially not in the winter. In the summer, obviously it's more because you can be outside more because it's sunny. But um yeah, so he's in school. So um we get him up, get ready, he goes to school. So he's in an SEN school, which is a special education needs school. It's purpose built for autistic children. So he's in a small class. It's a great school. So we know, at the very least every day he's been there, that he's had, good support. He's done learning tailored to him, and they have a lot of resources for the sensory needs and everything like that. Then when he comes home, we do some kind of like physiotherapy with him. So it's like manipulating his muscles and massage just at the end of the day, for proprioceptive and vestibular input, which helps with his sensory needs as well. That's something we've been doing since he was like 3 years old. So that's just a part of the routine. He then is allowed to have like his iPad time for an hour, which, to be honest, he's not really a big like kid who wants to just sit for hours and watch. Like, he would rather be doing things. So like I said, if it was the summer, he'd be out in the garden the whole time. He'd be in the pool, climbing, trampoline. Like, he just loved to be like physical and outside, which is good. I'm glad. So he has his iPad time. Just, a lot of autistic kids and adults actually struggle with sleep. So we have spent years figuring out what is the best routine for him around that. So for us, it is that he goes to bed later than like the average child. So Jude doesn't go to bed till about 10 o'clock. But that's just because we've worked out over the years that if he goes earlier, he'll just be awake for hours. So there's just no point, because that just then overstimulates them, and you don't just want them, sat in the bedroom doing nothing for 2 hours, just getting worked up. So although that reduces the time that I have like alone to have like grown up time or anything, it's just how it is. I normally go to bed about the same time, or I'll work once he's gone to sleep. Because again, with my own neurodivergence, I struggle to relax and sleep anyway. And he sleeps with me currently. But as I said, because we're going through change at home now, Jude and I will be moving out. And I have said that once we move out, I will be separating the bedrooms. I mean, he does have his own bedroom here, but I will be separating the bedrooms and really putting my foot down that is that. And it isn't a case of him being spoiled. He actually slept through, because I've always been very strict with certain things. He slept through from 5 months old for 12 hours, and I was the, gloating parent that everybody else's kids weren't sleeping, and Jude was. And then once he started school, he started struggling a little bit. And as in, he would be up for hours when he went to bed, or he'd wake in the night and be up all night after that. And then about 3 years ago, we don't know why, because he's nonverbal, obviously, but I think that he had some sort of night terrors, because he woke up and he was terrified. And he's not a crier. He's not like, he doesn't complain. He was terrified, shaking. And from that night, he cannot sleep without one of us with him. If he does fall asleep and we come out, he will wake up in the night and he'll be the same. So after a long time of, trying to be firm, it was just at the point where, and we've had support off the sleep clinic and things like that. It was just at the point where the three of us needed to sleep by any means possible, especially for Jude, because he needs the sleep to recharge and, for his development and everything. So we just said that's how it's going to have to be. But now he is getting a bit older, and obviously he'll be 11 in May. So I'm just conscious of the fact that as he'd be going through puberty and things like that, that's not appropriate. And I don't want that to affect anything for him in the future and things like that. So yeah, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it. I'm going to set his room up with all kinds of stuff, and it's going to work better, because it's not going to be like we're doing it here. It's going to be in a completely new house, new bedroom. So it's a whole thing that I'll be able to say, this is your bedroom, this is mummy's bedroom. And yeah, and then hopefully I'll get a little bit of time back. And also for him, that, when you sleep with someone else, you don't get as good a sleep as you sleep, most of us, as you do when you sleep alone. So he will hear, particularly with his dad, his dad moving around or coughing, snoring. So he isn't getting the best sleep either. So yeah.
Okay.
Um, mm,
With the nonverbal part, is there
mhm.
language? Does he communicate through sign or through computers?
Yeah, so he's got a program on his iPad that he can use, which I mean, it's very advanced. You can use it for a lot more, but he uses it mostly for requesting.
Mm,
So he'll say, Mom, I want one biscuit, and he can do that. And it's not typing it out. You can type on there, but he's not at the point where he can type yet. But it's like a picture sequence that you follow. It's very complicated to us, but the kids pick it up. It's amazing. And he uses that not so much at home because like I said, we know what he's communicating. Like as parents, you do know what your child's communicating. And he does make sound like he's not mute. He's not quiet. He's not shy. Um, if I ask him a question, he will say, yeah, like he'll try, and if he wants pizza, we'll say, give him a choice. And if he wants pizza, he'll say, pa, pa, so he does like, he's on the road to it. And like I said, we're doing everything we can to like build those connections in his brain to get to that point. But yeah, like I said, luckily, touch wood, he doesn't get frustrated with it. Because I think like we handle it pretty well. He has visual aids. When he very first got diagnosed, which is such a simple thing, but and then we realized that, he wasn't just a late developer. He wasn't just going to be a late talker. This was going to be an ongoing issue. And I'd done all the research. I printed out, took pictures of everything at home that he would use. So like his drinking cup and the toilet, like all different things, and printed pictures of those out. And the next morning, at that stage, he was still having like warm milk in the mornings. And he come into my bedroom with the picture of the warm milk.
okay.
So it was like amazing that, for 3 years he's not been able to communicate. And obviously I do it for him when I wake up in the morning anyway, but he had brought that to me, that was him asking for his milk. So yeah, it's just things like that we need to do to allow him to communicate as much as possible through
Hmm.
different ways.
Yeah.
Mm.
I had one other thing that I wanted to kind of circle back about in regards to you. When
Mm-hmm.
you finally were told, okay, yes, you do have the autism spectrum condition and
Mm-hmm.
the ADHD, did you feel relief by hearing this?
Yeah. I mean, the autism thing had been, so it took from when I got referred, and because like I said, when I originally thought I identified with it, that wasn't a thing. That was enough. I didn't want to get a diagnosis. It didn't interest me. Then once I started going through the mental health struggles and researching different things. And like I said, the medication offered wasn't working. And then at the same time, I was seeing a therapist, and luckily she had some experience with autism. So she referred me, she said, because she obviously knew about Jude and that it is often hereditary. She referred me for the assessment, but it took, so our health service, the NHS, do offer that, but it took a year, just over a year for that to come through. Now it's like 4 or 5 years because this was like 4 years ago. Um, I pretty much knew that was I would have been shocked if I didn't have
Okay.
autism. And again, that was just more about understanding myself and explaining things. With autism, obviously, there isn't any medication that you can take to make things easier. The big relief for me was with ADHD, which wasn't even a factor for me. The only knowledge I had of ADHD at the time was I would just think about, a naughty little boy that can't sit still and they're causing havoc. That's what I would think. So um, after I had the autism diagnosis, I started seeing a therapist who specialised in neurodivergent, and she said, I am surprised you weren't dual diagnosed. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, ADHD and autism. And I was like, no, I'm not, because I'm not physically hyperactive. And she said, it presents differently in women and everything else. And if you get a diagnosis of ADHD, there is medication that can help with that, but you need the diagnosis first. So because at that point I was still struggling, I then thought, well, I can't wait another year to get this diagnosis and possibly get medication. I need to get it sorted. So then I paid to get the diagnosis privately, had the assessment. They go through all your childhood school reports and everything, because obviously both conditions are lifelong. So if you can't show that you've had that from childhood, you can't get the diagnosis, because it can't be something that's just started presenting now. Then once I had that, then I was able to start on ADHD medication, which has been life changing, along with the other changes that I've made. It's not just the medication itself. So yeah, that was a huge relief, and it was just good to have the knowledge. Which, as I said, medication is, if you're struggling severely like I was, and it's not for everyone because there's so many different kinds of ADHD, it's not for everyone. But the biggest thing is having the knowledge of how you work, and how your brain works differently, and why. And you have that knowledge, you can then understand yourself better, and accept it, and learn to manage your your life better, really. So particularly when you have a bad day, for women, when we've got premenstrual symptoms, or for the menopause symptoms, all those kinds of things, I now know that hormones massively affect women with ADHD. So I can see it coming, I can feel it, and I can talk myself through it. Whereas when you don't have that knowledge, you kind of feel like you're just losing your mind, and you're like, how much longer can I go on like this? But now I know, yeah, I'll still have those days, but I know that they will pass. Because I've been through it, I've experienced it, and I know that it's the chemicals fluctuating in the brain, that are the hormones, that are making me feel like that. It's not that there's anything wrong with me. So that's like the huge part of it. So some people, a lot of people say to me when I speak to them about, because I tell everyone up, because I just think it should be something that's openly talked about my conditions. And a lot of people say, oh, I think I could be this, or my sister, or whatever, but they're not interested in getting a diagnosis. And like, as an adult, that's fine. If that's your choice, if that, it is fine. But I would say that definitely for women, there will come a point though where you will want to have that diagnosis, for sure, for the reasons I've just explained, either to try medication or change certain things in the lifestyle, and just get more of an understanding of why you think and behave like how you do. So that was like the point for me of doing that. Yeah.
I'm glad you're on a path that feels better. It feels better in your body, and you understand yourself more.
100%. Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us. We are going to link to your book. It's called The Autistic Mom. It is absolutely a fantastic book. Jessica has a website, and you can find her on Instagram, and we will link to both of those. The website is all one word, theautisticmom.net, and her Instagram handle is an underscore and then the AA Life and another underscore. And we will definitely link to them in the show notes.
Okay,
Jessica,
perfect.
thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thanks so much, Stephanie.
All right,
Bye.
Slow Down Society. Consider yourself loved and hugged. I think you are absolutely wonderful. I'm so happy that you're here and you're spending time with us. Give yourself a love and a hug, and see you again next week. If you are ready to start living slowly and ditch the hustle mindset for good, reach out to me. I'm a real person, and you can track me down online at stephanieoday.com. Also, if you found value in this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and tag me on Instagram at Stephanie O'Day. While you're at it, go ahead and leave a positive review on your favorite podcast app. The more we share, the more people we can reach and share the slow down lifestyle and messaging. Thank you, Slow Down Society, and have a great day.